Welcome to episode 534 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I am interviewing Italian animation producer named Pietro Schito. He has done a number of animated projects both as a writer and producer. So today he's going to talk about his career, and then we talk about the state of animation and how AI is going to impact it in the near future. So stay tuned for that interview. SYS's six-figure screenplay contest is open for submissions. Just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. Our regular deadline is May 31st. If your script is ready, definitely submit now to save some money. We're looking for low-budget shorts and features. I'm defining low budget as less than six figures. In other words, less than $1 million US. We've got a lot of industry judges reading scripts in the later rounds. We're giving away thousands of dollars in cash and prizes, along with a bunch of other prizes to bring exposure to the top screenplays. We have a short film script category, 30 pages or less. So if you have a low budget short script, by all means submit that as well. I've got a number of industry judge producers who are looking specifically for short scripts. So hopefully we can find a home for some of those as well. If you want to submit or learn more about the contest, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast. And then just look for episode 534. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and career letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So a quick few words about what I've been working on. I am now in pre-production on my ultra micro budget feature rom-com. I am slowly starting to put the pieces together. It looks like we'll be shooting in the last week of October and the first 2 weeks of November. I've got my crew pretty much figured out. I'm going to keep things super small and manageable. My cinematographer from The Pinch, Bernie Rao, is coming back, and he is bringing one of his filmmaker friends who he has worked before on other films, and they're going to be my crew. They'll run the camera. They'll also do sound. We might have a day or two where we have a slightly larger crew, but that's basically going to be it. The sound, camera, and then me as a director and line producer. I've also started to lock in some of my locations. The main location is just a bar. It's sort of a standard American bar in the year 2025. And I found a great one that's willing to work with us, so that's exciting. It's up in Ventura, which is about 30 minutes north of Los Angeles. It's a fantastic location, has a lot of character, looks really cool. And the owner is just a really cool guy. He seems like to really like the idea of just having his bar in a film. So that's exactly what I was looking for. One interesting thing, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, trying to rent a location for a film shoot in Los Angeles is just ripe with issues. I found a bar in the middle of the San Fernando Valley, which would have been good. Frankly, I don't think it would have been as good as the bar that I eventually found. So sometimes necessity is the mother to push you to that next step. But it's a great location, and they were willing to work with us on our price. So they didn't try and bicker over the rate that I could afford, but they didn't want to commit until September. And I sort of took that to mean that they were hoping that they could rent the place out for more money. And so they didn't want to commit to me since I wasn't going to be paying them a ton. As the producer, that definitely worried me. So I kept looking and kept trying to find someplace else, which I eventually did. But I guess the bottom line is it seems like getting out of LA, even by 30 minutes, makes dealing with these location owners much easier. So I'm going to try and use the same strategy for some of my other locations too. We'll see how that goes. The next location I need, it's really only for like a half day. It's just one little scene in a department store where they go on a date and they're buying some new clothes, and they do there's a little interaction near the changing room. So I've got to find that location, and that is going to be difficult just because most department stores obviously are big box retailers. They're not going to want to rent to me for the little bit of money that I have. And I've started to look at some sort of smaller boutique clothing shops, and they don't quite fit the script. So I've got to figure that part out. I'm still looking, as I said, if I can find a good location, I will definitely do that. But I'm thinking I might have to just entirely rewrite the scene. I mean, I know what has to happen in the scene. And interestingly too, now that I'm looking for locations, I sort of have an idea of what locations are easier to find. So just as an example, I noticed when I was looking for bars, there's a lot of places that salons, barber shops, that kind of thing. So I was thinking maybe I could easily change this scene and rent in a salon or a barber shop. So that's one idea. We'll see if that actually comes to pass. It gets a little dicey as I think it through. Again, this is low budget, so it's not like we're going to have, all the time in the world, and the schedule is going to be the schedule. Some of these locations are going to be available when they're available. So having a scene in a barber shop where you cut your protagonist's hair could potentially create some continuity issues. So I've got to think that through and sort of decide how that's going to work. Just, logistically, how are we going to film this guy? Because the bar cut the scenes at the bar, as an example, the scenes at the bar, that's like 6 days that we're going to need it. And it's obviously if the guy gets a haircut in the middle of the script, his hair is a little different. I'm thinking maybe he has short hair. We can do kind of just slick it back, maybe a little more gel on the days that he supposedly had the haircut. But those are the sorts of things, as I said, that I've got to sort of work through. I think I can find a salon or a barbershop fairly easy. I think from the screenwriting aspect, I think I could make that scene work. But then from the producing aspect, it does create some issues. So those are all sort of the things. Those are sort of the examples of sort of the problems that I'm working through, to create the best possible movie on the least amount of money and just given these constraints that we have. So anyways, that's what I'm sort of working through. If you live in LA, and you want to be involved in the film, I'm definitely going to need a lot of help. We're going to have 2 days where we need a bunch of extras, one day of which will actually be at that bar in Ventura I mentioned. But there will be other days. There's one other day that will definitely need some extras, and then there's some other days that maybe don't need extras, but be a little bit more difficult shooting days. So we might need a PA or even an AD or a second AD on some of those busier days. So really it's the whole gamut. If you have any production experience, you want to learn about production, or if you just want to be an extra, just help me out, come out and be an extra. I would definitely appreciate all the help. Just send me an email, info@sellingyourscreenplay.com, and I'll get your information, and then as we get closer to shoot date, we'll start to work out some of the specific logistics. But definitely, if you're in LA and you want to be an extra in the film, I'm going to need lots and lots of extras for these two different scenes. So I'd love to have some of the the SYS listeners come out and help out. So if you're in the LA area, definitely keep that in mind. Anyway, that's what I've been working on over the last few weeks. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I am interviewing animation writer and producer Pietro Schito. Here is the interview. Welcome, Pietro, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
So I grew up in Milan, Italy, a large Italian family. And since I was a little kid, I would basically spend all my afternoons creating movies with my camera or drawing. I'm one of the few Italians that doesn't like soccer. So my friends will be out playing and I'd be inside drawing. And a couple of encounters that I had with the animation industry really shaped a possibility for me to work in what I think it's the best art in the world. Of course, it's a subjective biased judgment, but I really loved from the first film I watched in the movie theater, which was The Little Mermaid, to then meeting a couple of Disney animators on a train from Milan to Rome, and I was mesmerized by the beauty of the trait and the fact that they were drawing. They gave me a
Huh.
gift as a kid, and I kept creating these stories by myself with my brothers and friends with an old Handycam that my parents got as a gift, and but I didn't have any idea about any of the storytelling and narrative structures and principles that we can learn from up until college, when a Disney screenwriter came to give a hands-on workshop. And this guy was amazing, and he ended up being the what's his title was I think head of like a big name in Disney Plus. Like it's just I don't remember exactly right now, but he moved to the States and worked at Disney for more than 20 years. But he really gifted me this idea of narrative principles, not rules, but principles that can really help you. So I immediately thought about all those dozens of silly films that I used to create by myself with a camera, and suddenly understanding that, if I had those principles in mind from the beginning, I could have done so much more, not as a regret, but as something that basically opened up the world of narrative. And that's when I said, yes, this is the best job in the world. I mean, you bring these characters to life, and that's how I got into screenwriting more professionally, and to animation. Then I moved to LA to study at the New York Film Academy, and then I'm now in Mexico, and where I connected with the stop motion community that's been fostered by Guillermo del Toro in a local studio here, and other stuff. But that's kind of like the gist of how the passion
Yeah.
started.
Gotcha. So let's talk about some of your first credits. You did a number of shorts that you wrote and directed. And just looking at your IMDb page, I noticed some of them were animated, but some of them were not. Maybe you can speak to that. Was it always your intention as you started to make these shorts? Like Horror Kitchen is listed as your first credit on IMDb, and it didn't look like it was an animation project. So maybe you can sort of talk through that. How did you get that going? Were you on this track to be in animation, and you just took a sidetrack to explore other things? Maybe you can talk about that. How did you get that film made?
Yeah, I love the question. Thank you. Horror Kitchen, for example, was my very first short film, and it is live action. It's this girl that gets home. It was part of a film festival, and it's a very simple idea of a girl coming back home. It looks like it's a horror thing that somebody broke into her apartment, but then when she slowly opens the door, you see that all her appliances basically are brought to life, and they created a birthday party for her. So it's a short film that it's based on a surprise,
Huh.
and that had this animation element and love, because it's not stop motion, but we used baby fish line and threads to move the different parts of the different characters, uh, uh, and so it's still the soul, and that brings us to the idea of animation is not a genre, and so it's a medium. And so I think that at the same time, animation has a specific energy, a specific fantasy approach that we can have as writers, and I can observe that that has always been part of the things I love to do. Nowadays you have live action films. They're live action, but they're really animated, like the live action remakes like Lion King or Mufasa or Avatar, from James Cameron. That's basically animation. So it's just about distinguishing the medium and the genre. And so I also worked on live action in because it is still storytelling. And actually, there's no difference between a script that is for live action and one for animation on the page. And so it's about the style and the fact, something I really love about animation is the fact that you can really blend and morph reality. You can get into these inner states. with much more freedom, and it's much more accepted, and that allows for a certain kind of story. But of course, as a medium, you could tell any kind of story, a drama or a comedy,
Mhm.
a kids film or a four-quadrant film. And so I also worked in behind the scenes for some live action films, and also as a story consultant. That really helped me understand all the departments of a live action production. And so I would love to go and chat with the prop master, understand all these elements that then actually translate in animation as well. I mean, a prop master takes a real thing and create props for a film, but it's the same for animation. Actually even more, because in live action, some locations they kind of exist, or at least you have some baseline where you start building stuff on top, or if you're in a studio, it might be everything from scratch. But in animation, everything is actually always from scratch. You need to build everything. And so I think that it was a good experience to be in live action as well. And storytelling is my passion,
Mhm.
regardless of the medium.
So just maybe you can give us sort of a sense of some of the more business decisions you were making during this time. So you made like Horror Kitchen, and then, how did that eventually get you? Now you have two feature films that you've written, Thingdom and Insomnia, that are in production. And maybe you can sort of walk us through those steps. Did you start to try and get an agent? Did you just network on sets and meet people? Did you tell people, oh, I'm also a screenwriter? Like, how did you actually start? I noticed you have a credit for The Astronaut. It looks like it's a video game. Like, just how did you go from just making a short yourself to getting into professional storytelling and animation, just making that leap from just doing stuff on your own versus doing stuff professionally for other people?
I think the key is always networking. I don't like the word because it's really about nurturing real connections and finding ways to be useful. For an example, I wanted to get on a production called a feature film called Little Boy, because I had a friend working there, and I thought it was very interesting. And I was in Mexico. It was going to be shot in the studio that was created by James Cameron for Titanic here. So it was an attractive experience to me to meet the local community around that studio with the James Cameron school, and get to share the experience with friends. And I remember that at that point, I was starting out. I wanted to do anything. I told one of the producers, need a driver, I'll be there. I'll be on time. And he said, when the studio was funded by James Cameron, it was then sold to someone else. But we basically have everyone. There's nothing that we need. I remember trying different approaches and trying to get in. Basically, it was a no. And then a producer friend of mine told me something that to me it didn't make sense, especially back in the days. He said, "Why don't you propose creating a blog and a production diary of the film? This is an indie production. It's not like you're creating Star Wars or something that, you have a fan base or something." But I've learned that to be humble and trust is usually a good idea. Then also I didn't have much to lose, so I created a mock-up of a blog with a production diary, looked up who was the lead actor, so put a picture, like a little mock-up to show, this is what you're gonna get. 5 minutes later, I get three emails from the three main the heads of the studio, each of them with different wording, basically telling me, we need this right now. Come here, take a flight as soon as you can, and you're in. That is, you might see that as a big coincidence, but I think that putting yourself out there and trying to find ways you can be helpful in any situation, even very little things. Sometimes we think that big names and people that are, you know, they're at the top of their career, you have nothing to offer. And I believe that there's always something you have to offer specifically that no one else can. And so finding those alternatives. And in the industry, you ask 100 people how they got in, and I'm glad that you're asking your guests, because you learn a lot from different ways. But I always see, there's the door where you could have an agent and then submit your scripts, and then selected by the readers, and then the readers submit to the studio. In animation, that's almost impossible. It's just statistically, it's very unlikely that they're gonna, like, a big studio taking a new writer. You have to pass so many filters. That said, like a building, an animation studio, they have the main entrance and they have a lot of windows. And so when I ask 100 people, I'm pretty sure 90, 95, 99 people would tell you, I got in through the window. Not that you're doing anything strange. It's just the fact that you nurture these connections, and then you've always put yourself in a position to help. How can I help in this situation? And a different approach. And sometimes I had that bad approach. I don't think it's useful. Is trying to go and ask people, telling them what you need. I have this project, and I see that a lot. Like we all have our baby, our big project, but going around and telling everyone about our baby, our project, and trying to cram it into the conversation, I don't think it's a good approach to find first ways to help others. That has something that has helped me. And then from behind the scenes, one of the actors from the film now has an animated series on Netflix. He's a Disney actor that was very connected there. While I was studying in LA, I connected to the animation industry as I went to meet the leadership at Pixar. I went to all possible events and try to genuinely connect. I'm an introvert, and maybe the what we do on here on here and on the YouTube channel, it's pushing myself outside my comfort zone. But uh, it's not about me. It's not how I am. It's about the result, about the stories. So, long story short, it was through direct connections, and some of them became friendships, and in the industry, one-on-one, not strategic. I don't believe in cold emailing people, and try to create these connections and find a way to help others.
So, well, that's an excellent answer. And I think that's, I hope people really listen to that. Let me dig into a couple little points there, though. So when this producer suggested that you make this web blog, production blog, you already had some experience doing web development, correct? Like you already knew how to lay out websites. You had things, or was just, you had to like learn that to figure it out or to be part of it.
No, I didn't. I mean, I always loved computers, and since I was a kid, so I would do. Yeah, this is something that most of the audience doesn't even know about, like front page, Microsoft some front page, all ways to create a website. But it was more about the documenting with the camera. I was expecting, a big camera. They gave me this handy cam, like very cheap, and had to, interestingly enough, the construction and prop department, they created. I didn't even have a microphone. They didn't have a budget. It was all improvised. I didn't have a camera, and the prop guy created an adapter for a microphone to be there. It was very interesting, but it was more about shooting on set. And so from live action sets, you start very early in the morning, and so sunrise to sunset is it's your time for light. And so I would go and interview all these departments. This film is set in the 40s, so it was very interesting. They built an entire town, small town, and so I was interviewing the actors, but also costume designers, casting, the head of casting, and that's the web component helped, and actually was because they were reporting to investors. This is an indie production, so they used the behind the scenes for many promotional clips and things like that. But the coincidence happened because they needed to show and prove that to their investors that, we're advancing, we need more money, but look, we built a town, the casting has started. And so they needed that, and it was a very interesting coincidence. For me, it was a learning experience because if I was a driver or even assistant to an actor or someone, a PA, I would have never been able to learn so much from all the departments. Now, another coincidence that was very interesting is that there were two people from Pixar on the set. Well, they were working on and off at Pixar, one from Lucasfilm, and doing storyboards. They had a very interesting approach to storyboard for that film. I got to chat with them through the interview because, people are busy on set, and it's not like they have time to tell you all about their experience. And to me, it was fascinating. Even the style of the storyboards was very, animation-like. And and they remember asking them, your experience in animation. So I think that anything that brings you into people who love film, even if it's not, the exact thing you want, even if you're not at Disney or I don't know, the studio that you think of as the perfect environment, you will always find options and contacts that can help you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's dig into some actual production of animation. As I mentioned, I have this animated pilot that I wrote a few years ago. It's a kid's sort of superhero, so we'll dig in some specifics. But just in general, just walk us through sort of the animation production line. What comes first? You do storyboards? Do you hire artists to design the characters? And as you say, start building the locations, design the characters. But just in sort of broad strokes, walk us through this process. Once you have a script that you think is ready to go, what are those next steps?
It's a great question because there are so many misconceptions with animation, especially if you come from screenwriting and you've written for live action, then you focus a lot on the script. The script needs to be very good, perfect, and then now I have it. This is my script. I'm gonna knock at doors and I'll find someone to put a crew, a team together, or a studio that wants it, or trying to sell the script itself. First of all, it's very, very hard to sell an original script to any animation studio, because usually in animation, ideas come from within. And that this is not to discourage anyone. For example, when I was studying in LA, all my teachers would tell me, why are you writing? We had to write 2 feature films in 1 year. So it was very intense. And the teachers would tell me, why are you writing animation? I mean, no one will ever pick up a studio, uh, a script, like an animated script from the outside. And I was like, I don't care. I mean, I want to, these are the kind of stories I want to create, and I don't regret at all. It's not like the script needs to be sold. It's just to be involved in the medium, and then that script will open other opportunities. But it's true that trying to sell a script, especially in a feature film, just to a studio, it's not usually how those projects happen. They usually are developed from within, especially for the big studios, the Disney,
Yeah.
Pixar, Netflix, DreamWorks. It's very, very unlikely. Usually when an original idea starts from within, from the outside, it's already someone that has a deep connection within the studio, or they're working in a different department. And even that is not very likely. That said, Hollywood is not the only route. Even within Hollywood and the international market, you see a lot of independent productions. And even there, it's unlikely that you just, show with your script and it gets bought. Usually what allows a project to happen is more the entirety of the project. And that's why having a solid pitch deck with killer art, something concept art, that and character designs that you can really see as a producer, you can see the full picture. And so usually, you have an idea, you have a script. As it's hard for people to read a script in general. So the advantage of animation, is that it's a little more normalized, that you present something more in a pitch deck form, which allows many more people to read it. And especially if it has the art, it's an easy read compared to another live action drama that these people have to read. And then the more elements you have, the better. So let's do like a quick list. I hope this can be helpful for your audience to understand what are the steps. As always, in film, in art, these things tend to happen out of order. But if you had to focus on something and set goals, I would start with an idea, of course, having a good logline to share it. Then you get into synopsis, and you get into script, trim, and rewrites. But at some point, you want to start seeing what you're talking about, what you're writing about. You want to maybe hire a concept artist or a character designer and trying to create a pre-production independent team that can help you visualize this project. If you are tight on budget, I would focus on one piece of key art that that shows what is this about, what is the vibe of this of the story. That's something that if you go to Disney, for example, they always put on the wall this key art for any of their new films, like to put everyone on the same page. I'm looking at one now. I have a poster there for one of their films. It's this landscape art that it's one piece, very well done, but it gives you the entire vibe from the tone, the colors, the character, the dynamic. Hopefully you also see some kind of a story in a single picture. And those things, they really are sometimes what sells a project, because they know that in animation that the story will be evolving constantly. So that's why I love it. I think that it's wonderful that compared to live action, you get surrounded by people that are constantly improving your story. So you look smarter as a screenwriter in animation because the story is getting better and better and better. And so on the other side, it means that, having the perfect polished script, maybe it's not the best bet at that moment. If you wanna produce and see this project on the screen, if you wanna use it as a piece of portfolio, then polish it and do another one and do another one, do spec scripts and things as an animation writer. That's a different path. If you wanna focus on being staffed in an animated TV show or solely as a writer. And so after this pitch deck that hopefully you have, a synopsis, key art, character design. If it's TV, maybe an episode springboard, which is a quick summary of all these the episode ideas that you had. Maybe you have your pilot attached as well. But also the next step would be, if you're in the independent market, it would be to produce two things: a teaser, something that gives a better taste of what the vibe, the style, the animation technique as well, and then a pilot if it's a TV show, which is way more expensive. For that, you need a studio, because usually it's the only way, you can produce something like that, even for a teaser. And for a producer, even a big studio like Netflix, for you, the more elements they have and the more they can trust all the elements, the easier it is for them to pick up the show, and at least for a pilot production. And so with a teaser, you can show not only that the idea is much more tangible, and it's easier to get a gist of what is this show about, but also you're showing that you have the right connection with the studio. Hopefully they have some credits that can prove that they are able to pull off a production, and that there's a specific style, there is a pipeline and technique that's been thought to create this show, and that will help you. It's another element you have. Sometimes you can go with the different studios and say, I'm creating this. I would love to attach you as a potential studio, and we're talking about, I don't know, it's a feature film, 5, 10, 15, whatever million of dollars of that's how we think we're gonna budget this film, and you can create an agreement with the studio. Sometimes if there is an exchange where they're providing maybe talent and resources to create a teaser, then you get into the legality of an agreement, and with a teaser, a pitch deck, and a pilot or a script, then you have all the elements. And the key element, of course, is also you pitching the show, you pitching the project. And so the verbal pitch is not like you can never get away from that. It's always super important. Plus nowadays, if you have a teaser, put it on social media, put it everywhere, because no one will read the script, but everyone will click on a 30, 60-second teaser. And those things, if they're good, they travel very fast.
Okay. So, and that's all fantastic. And I hope people really listen to that, because I think that was a real good sort of crash course in sort of, getting these animated projects through, and exactly what you're saying. And that's been my understanding, I've never worked in animation, is that it's just a very difficult. I mean, Pixar is not just looking at spec scripts and producing them. These things are, the people that are writing those have long track records, have been probably working for Pixar for years. So I get all that. So now let's just talk about, and that's definitely one track that people, if they want to be animation writers, I met a woman when I first got to LA that was in animation, and she had gotten a job. It was some sort of like, she was in the writer's room of some sort of kids TV, animated TV show. And it seems to me that was sort of a very traditional track where you get in there and become a producer and a writer. As I mean, she was like whatever the lowest person in the story room was, taking notes type of a thing, but then working her way up. So there's definitely that track. But let's talk about just if you wanted to produce this independently, and don't be afraid to push back on me, because I want to get a real reaction. I want people to hear your reaction to me about
Absolutely.
some of the
Yes.
things I'm about to propose. So I've done a lot of work, or I've used a lot of outsourcing through services like Upwork.com, where there's tons of people in other countries that were willing to work much cheaper than Americans for programming, and animation is a big one. I had an animated logo created for ASM Media Incorporated when I did some of my films. It was a nice 4K animation. I think I paid $150 for it. I got someone to do it very, very inexpensively. And I have since, Mike, I have young kids. They're on YouTube all the time. Now they've gotten a little older, but certainly when they were younger, like 6, 7, 8 years old, they would run into tons and tons. And I would definitely say it was sort of lower end animation, but it was tons of these YouTube channels. And when I would sort of research them, they were folks in Pakistan and India that were just flooding YouTube with these animated kids shows and getting a lot of views and stuff. And when I'm on Upwork, and I've had some conversations with some of these animators and stuff that are in India, that are in some of these other countries where they're willing to work cheaper, is that you get some really low price, and you kind of keep going back to saying, well, you need a studio to produce this. Suppose I actually, because this is my idea. Again, maybe I'm completely out of my mind. This is a crazy idea, but my idea is to produce this pilot independently, hire the animators, find some people in another country to work cheaply, and work through that process, but end up with a 22-minute pilot that I can take around and sell. And maybe I would even try and raise the money and just shoot an entire season, like 12 episodes, write them, and then try and produce 12, and then try and sell like a season of animation to some sort of a network. Or, I mean, there's so many of these streaming platforms. If the quality was good, maybe I could find some success that way. But walk through that. Like, you keep saying you need a studio to produce it. Is it because you just need like 200 people to produce a 90-minute animated thing? There's just so much work to be done that even if you're only paying them $1 an hour, you still need hundreds of people. What is sort of some of the pitfalls that I would run into if I try and do this, where I try and go and really cut corners and do it super, super cost effectively?
Okay, I love the question because it's very concrete. My first gut reaction is, no, don't do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I know. And I knew I
But
could tell this.
yeah, no, but that's great. I love the openness, because this is gonna help people, and hopefully you as well with the particular project. It's much better to speak about a concrete reality than just the ideal path.
Mhm.
So you're bringing up some different. There are so many different styles of animation. You have um, the Disney and Pixar, even TV, it's so different from feature. And then you have kids show that are very raw and on Netflix. And then you have all the YouTube stuff that can be very entertaining and good storytelling, but you don't really focus too much um, on the quality of animation in a traditional sense of the budget that gives you the ability to really, really tweak all the details and have different backgrounds and comps and things like that. So I think that there's space for everything. There are some huge channels that have I spoke with some of them recently that had these huge followings of millions and millions of people watching, and they know they're the first one to make fun of their animation. It's really bad. And but now they're in conversations with big studios to do basically recreate the entire show with higher quality, and push something that could have not happened without going towards a cheaper route. And you can look at finding cheaper work in both ways. On one hand you have the cheap work, but on the other hand you have this, you know, you're hiring people. If you're as long as they're treated fairly, you have you're contributing to society that way. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's always bad. And also, it's I now live in Mexico. I can definitely tell that there is the cost of life is so different that it allows you to, have a different pricing for some studios. And even in 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 many countries, you find top-notch studios that are working for the big studios like Disney, and 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 they're doing fantastic work. And so the fact when I insist on a studio is I was mainly thinking about something that is more polished and more like a feature film or a series. As a proof of concept, you can find a studio. Unless you really want to go the YouTube style, and it's to get a lot of views and entertain kid, with the potential of then bringing that to a different level. uh, I wouldn't go to Upwork, because I think that, or any website where you find individual talent. But that doesn't mean that your team needs to be huge, hundreds of people. You can have a small team, but if they have a studio, you can see their portfolio. There's also their cohesion in what they're doing. There's some direction, and you're in for a ride, quite a ride. If it's not, it's always complicated, because sometimes you have the price is not the only element. Sometimes cheap means more expensive at the end. And
Hmm.
so uh, for a teaser, then it's easier, because maybe you can find in animation, the range is so big. You have short films that are millions of dollars. Short films from big studios that are more expensive than the Academy Award winner uh, in the animation category flow. And uh, and and you and and that, and partly is because big studios, they also use it for research and development, but when they create a short film. But it's still, you have that high budget production, and then you have things that are very, very cheap. And so it really depends also on what the story is requiring. If you have a lot of effects, if you have a lot of characters, crowds, action, and that is where things can be different. But also the history has been full of examples of things there, and they broke the mold and created something, put it out there. What I know for a fact is that all these streamers are constantly scanning social media, and specifically YouTube, for this, what is the next hell of a boss, what is the next project that is starting with a small team, but then it's going to explode. And so that could be a good approach as well, and you can also replace and make things better.
Hmm.
And so I would start with a small teaser, like and a common mistake with teasers is that they showcase the studio and the quality of the work. And so you would see these teasers where you have something that shows the effects and the fact that the studio is capable of pulling off some specific technical challenge in animation. I'm a strong believer in a teaser that focuses on emotions first. And if you're able to encapsulate in 30 seconds what is the emotional driver of the story, what is the thing that really makes you care for this show and this character, then you can also focus then on technical aspects. But that won't come later, because there's no conversation if they're not, if with any pitch, if they're not emotional about it, if there's
Hmm.
no, if you they don't care, even if you can do 1,000 explosions, crowds, water, fluid simulation, and hair, and perfectly, it can look cool, but it's the conversation is not moving forward. As you perfectly know, when you pitch, these people, they're listening to hundreds of pitches, and it's not gonna stick if there's not something special.
Gotcha. Now, what do you think of some of the advances that Unreal Engine has made? Because that's another thing on the Upwork. There's a lot of people that know how to do it. And the other big thing with the Unreal Engine is there's whole marketplaces now where you can buy characters and edit them. You can buy backgrounds and environments and the whole bit. And I mean, these things are dirt cheap. I mean, once someone creates them, and again, how could that does that play into modern animation? Could you do something really just quickly and cheaply using some of these tools like that?
Yeah, so it's just, I would say it's have moving the conversation to a different world of animation where now it's more about efficiency and trying to get the job done and not caring as much about how certain things look and are designed. Because if you look any art book of any animated film at big studios, or even some independent productions, there's a real care of how everything looks, and so they would really distance themselves from something procedural, with exceptions. You have to create a lot of buildings for a town. It's not really, and once you have the general idea of the visual language of the show, especially in TV, you also need to find a cheap solution to do it. So it's not like you can design every single thing. So
Yeah.
that's where libraries, and nowadays I know that can also, you have a tree, and then that tree is not always the same. It depends on the style. If you want a photorealistic stuff, then you know these game engines, you don't really care if the tree has one more branch or not. It's in the background, and that's a principle of animation, knowing where to focus when you put your budget, and where you leave that in the background as a general tool. Because people sometimes, coming from live action, they think that you can do whatever you want because it's all in the computer. Well, actually, everything is expensive. Some things are even more expensive in the computer compared to that. So in production, Unreal Engine, I love it. We are experimenting with it on two projects that are blending stop motion with Unreal Engine, because it can be a very interesting blend to create things that are almost not impossible, but they would create the most expensive film in animation history if you had to do everything in stop motion. And finding that blend is very interesting. You're running all sorts of pipeline problems and difficulties. Yeah, and I know that Epic Games and Unreal as a team, they're working very hard, and they're very serious about bringing this as a tool for animation. Some things they sound very attractive, and that's something I also thought they were much easier than when you speak with people that know about pipeline. Because in an animation project, the pipeline is super important, and some studios, they each have different pipelines in animation. Usually go shot based, especially in TV, where sometimes you think, as coming from live action, that they just build everything. They build everything, and then you move the camera around. Everything is like a set that it's there for you, and you can go crazy. Many times, you work with plates, compositing, where some things are rendered separately. I'm not an expert in all this, but I can tell that it looks more promising than it is, because I've met people working with Unreal Engine, and I love that many people are pushing, many studios are working with that, and it will get there eventually. We're in that phase where it's better you have a good team on engineers to help you alongside, especially when it's not just a teaser, you want to keep doing stuff. And you can create very interesting things, especially in the animation part. It's a little more difficult now in terms
Mhm.
it's still not there. If your story has to do with that, that's why many projects they come from many of these artists, they come from the video game world, and some of these projects kind of look the same. It's robots, because they don't have to animate facial expression, or people they would have a helmet on, and things that
Mhm.
that they look really cool but then you stop and think about it and say, wait a minute, there's no facial expression, there's no style, everything looks very real. Water looks like water, there's no stylization. There's so many new tools that they're helping so much in that, and will we're moving towards that, and it's super interesting. Blender is another amazing tool. It's free, and um, it's more traditional, and they also have a real-time visualization. Again, I'm not an expert in
Hmm.
the technical aspect. Trying to understand and have someone evaluate the pipeline and tell you if it's sustainable, and try it. And but I love when people are not taken aback from all the no's that the industry tells you. Oh no, you can never do that. You can never do that. And then you just, you know, jump into the water and figure it out with a small team, and
Yeah.
you create something that if the story is there, then um, you can get better animation later
Hmm.
if it's a web thing.
So one of the things that I've been experimenting with, as I'm sure you have and a lot of other people, is just these AI image generators where you can type something in or upload a photo and it will create an image in a variety of styles. You know, any style that you want, it'll create it. How long do you think it's going to be? So number one, I had a question about that. Can you use something like that for storyboarding, like using AI to generate these storyboards? It seems to me that would be a good tool. But the sort of the follow up question to that is, how long do you think it will be before we can just upload our script to an AI and it will output the completed animated film? It seems to me that's sort of the direction this is ultimately heading.
Yeah, it's a very difficult topic because there's so many elements at play. You know, you have also the ethical discussion of how it was trained and all that. But speaking from a strictly technical perspective, I want to give my experience. So when you look at some of those pictures, and your eye is not trained, I'm talking about today's 2025. Maybe in 1 year everything will be different, but to the non-trained eye, you'd see something beautiful that could be, let's say you prompt something about, a character from the Star Wars universe, and you see a character and you say, yeah, that's totally Star Wars. I mean, it's there. I would buy that. And I remember we did some post-production work for the Schoolism platform, where artists, they teach you about different topics. They have one with about character design from a great character designer that worked with George Lucas and with others. And just by just as an external person, I'm not a character designer, but just to observe and go through the course and understand how much is there, like how much knowledge and care for details and thought about lines, colors, and shapes and expressions and background of that. You understand that, they're worlds apart. AI is mimicking that, and then for us is gonna be, oh, that looks cool. It's almost like the original art. And so it's very different from photography. Photography, I mean, again, I'm putting aside the ethical question
Hmm.
about,
Yeah, yeah.
how it was trained and all that, just to be specific, because, that's something to think about as well. But in a world where it looks like it's just inevitable and impossible, hopefully they will find more ethical ways to um, to train these models. And I don't know, if you're probably at a point of no return. I don't think that's gonna
Yeah, it's
change.
a
I
conversation for
think so.
another day.
Yeah, that's a whole podcast about it.
Yeah.
But so let's put the ethical part aside for a moment, just to focus on the quality of what we have. And so, for example, if you connect an AI with one of those engines like Unreal Engine or Blender, and you want to create something, a background, and you want to replace a lot of trees, and it's not copy and paste, so every tree is a little different. So it can generate probably other, branch formations and things. If it's something that is non-artistic, that just for the background, I mean, I guess that's something that's gonna uh, be very good. When you look at those some still pictures, they look very good because they're being trained on the films that we watch. And so especially some AIs, you can put basically a Pixar character, and it's the same way you can put an actor or a public figure, and it's photorealistic. But from that to really animate, because this thing, they don't animate, I mean, you see an animation, but technically it's not like they're animating. It's a very different process. And so the kind of control that you can have today is not, it's worlds far from how a good animation is. For something very cheap, I've seen
Hmm.
stuff online, and if you want to create things on TikTok to with curiosity data or little stories or bad nights, good, I guess you can do it, and very quickly, and I mean, those are more still pictures and movement. I do believe that it's getting there. I think that many people in the animation industry, they are completely in denial because of it's a shock to see that, I've spoken with, for example, Chris Sanders, the director of Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, now the beautiful The Wild Robot. And he told us, that he was on the Midjourney list of artists where they basically took all his body of work and used it to train without permission, without compensation. And so that arrangement, and I think it's, I mean, he has a point, because it's one thing is that you put something out there. The other thing is that, they can just crawl it and learn from it. And so for some of them, not Chris, but some of them, I think that the arrangement, it's kind of blinding to the fact that eventually I think it will get there. I think that we've seen it with photography and with video. The advancement is so fast. At that point, I worry more about, what is AI doing in general. I mean, it's just as a whole society, but that's, again, a third podcast,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
probably a completely different podcast. But yes, in terms of, today I was on LinkedIn. I saw something that was very interesting and impactful for the animation industry. So most storyboards that you see in the films that we watch are made on some platforms, like Toon Boom is one, Harmony is one of those. They help you with animation, specifically with pre-production and storyboarding. And they just launched, I watched the video where they completely embraced AI. They were very careful, because AI is a very hot topic with good reasons in the animation industry. They were very careful with the wording, but they're embracing it. And those are one of, that's the platform that every studio use. And so they allow you to um, put a script, and then it does a breakdown. I didn't look into that deeply, but in brief video, it would tell you that the AI will analyze the script, do scratch voices with AI generated audio, and things that are, I'm pretty sure the comment section is going to be very heated in that post, but eventually it looks like there's no way out.
Hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no specific question with a date answer with a date, but I think it is coming to some degree. Looking at the bright side, just very quickly, these films that we watch, Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, these are films that cost millions of dollars, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, with the very big productions. Indie films, like even the one that won an Academy Award, Flow, was 3.5, I think, million of dollar, five. I don't know what the final budget, but you're still talking about a project that's millions of dollars. And so if AI is used ethically and can suddenly bring the cost down even to 1 million, it's still a huge, investment of
Yeah.
money. And that will pluralize a lot the industry. So other voices, other communities, other people that are usually not in, they don't have a chance, then maybe that could be a good thing. Looking at the bright side, of course, if ethically, sourced, and if there's a way to do it properly. And so that is my take on AI, and
Okay.
it's complex.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, great. I think that is a lot for people to think about. So just quickly as we wrap up, is there something you just mentioned Flaw, but is there some other animated films out there, including Flaw? I guess you could talk a little bit about that you've been watching. I just like to wrap up by seeing what have the guests been watching recently? And maybe you can just anything on Netflix, Hulu, HBO that our mostly screenwriting audience might get some value out of.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with Flaw, because it's a very interesting case. I had a soft spot for The Wild Robot and DreamWorks finally getting recognition, but I'm very glad that Flaw won, because it's a statement for the industry. And it's the third time in a row where Disney doesn't get the Academy Award.
Hmm.
And animation is still its own category, as if it was a genre when it's a medium. And so Flow winning, I think, was a very good. I got to chat with the director Gintz at the Animationist Film Festival. Such an humble guy, and 30 people made that film, and he was, for him it was a big, a step up from his previous productions. And it proves that 30 people can, it's going to be more with the other VFX and other thing, other collaborations, but it's a great example. Now we need a flow that does a lot of money in the box office to really break um, the problem with the industry, which is that it's controlled by the distribution. Distribution is very it's controlling what we see, and so for indie animation to really be an alternative to all these films that have these giant marketing machines behind them would be for a flow, hopefully many more, to really have an impact in the box office as well, because I think it's great to have the recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a very interesting film. I loved the experience, and I think that we need more of those. He's working on the next one where he will have dialogue. And with my kids, I'm catching up on My Dad, the Bounty Hunter,
Oh, okay.
and that's a series that I thought it was very interesting, sci-fi. If you love the 90s sci-fi in the 90s, that's pretty much inspired by all those great movies.
Okay. My Dad, the Bounty Hunter. Where is that playing?
That's on Netflix.
On Netflix. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's a great recommendation. I have not heard of that one. So what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? I know you have a website and some courses and some information. I think you also have a podcast too. I saw some YouTube videos that you'd put together and stuff. So just tell us about all of that. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anything you're comfortable sharing, I'll round up for the show notes, but just go ahead and tell us about all your various platforms.
Yes, if you want to explore writing for animation, if you feel the passion for the medium, then come to Write for Animation. That is my plug. It's a YouTube channel where we interview the top talent in the industry. We had all the names I mentioned before, a lot of people from Pixar, Disney, Netflix, DreamWorks, independent people like Gintz from Flow, and we'll have more indie stuff very soon. And it's a place where you don't hear the usual speech of the PR marketing interview. We get top people from the industry to really get hands-on with the craft. And you are storytellers if you're listening to this. And regardless of your interest in animation, you're going to learn from the top storytellers at Pixar, all for free. Then we also have if you really want to boost your career and go even deeper, we do have the Write for Animation Academy. But getting on YouTube gives you like a lot. It's an entire film school basically for free with the top talent in the animation industry.
Gotcha.
And then
and that's literally
media,
it's literally writeforanimation.com. And then you also have a YouTube channel that goes along with it.
Yes, exactly. You can type Write for Animation on YouTube or go to writeforanimation.com. One special thing is we have a free section with a lot of guides and tools that are, again, completely free. You can get them. And we also have a mailing list that helps you weekly with free classes. And we're really about, putting out that knowledge that I didn't have, going back to the beginning, that I didn't have when I grew up. And now I want to, bring these great storytellers to all of you. So thank you so much, Ashley, for having me. It was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, no, this was. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me, taking some of your time. This was. I know I learned a lot. I'll probably have some follow-up questions, so maybe I'll circle back with those. But good luck with all your projects, and hopefully we'll hear from you again.
Thank you. Yes.
So
I would love to come back.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll talk to you later. Bye. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your screenplay gets a recommend or a consider from one of our readers, you get to list the screenplay in the SYS Select database, which is a database for producers to find screenplays and a big part of our SYS Select program. Producers are in the database searching for material on a daily basis, so it's another great way to get your material in front of them. As a further bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, your screenplay will get included in our monthly Best Of newsletter. Each month, we send out a newsletter that highlights the best screenplays that have come through our script analysis service. This is a monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of over 400 producers who are actively looking for material. So again, this is another great way to get your material out there. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. I actually don't have an interview recorded yet for next month, so I have absolutely no idea who I will be interviewing. So tune in next month for our very special mystery guest. I'm sure I will find someone cool. That's the show. Thank you for listening.